based on that, of these three pillars of critical thinking and this contrasting portrait of Elon Musk and Oprah Winfrey, I just want to speak quickly about the importance of imagination. There's an amazing book that many of you probably know by Virginia Woolf called A Room of One's Own. Wonderful book. The conference, it needs to be read. But there's something absolutely amazing that she does. One of the questions of the book is, why are there so few women who are great writers? So that's her big question. She's in literature. She's looking at the great writers in literature. She's thinking, why are there so few women? And is it because women are unable to write great books? And it has been said, and she quotes a few people in her times who say that. But if you read the book of Éric Zemmour, Le Premier Sexe, or something like that, he says the same thing. He says women are unable to be great writers. And but this is a great answer to that. In the third chapter of that book, Virginia Woolf makes a thought experiment. She uses imagination, and that's absolutely beautiful. She imagines what if William Shakespeare had a sister, Judith Shakespeare, who was equally as talented, equally as bright, the same level of genius. And she's going to do something that is rhetorically absolutely beautiful. Instead of saying, well, there's a sexist patriarchy that discriminates against women, that oppresses women, and women cannot become writers, which is absolutely true, and Simone de Beauvoir later will absolutely show it. But what Virginia Woolf does is that she's setting that aside. She's not engaging with that debate. She's just saying, let's imagine Judith Shakespeare. And then she goes through the life of William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare had to be educated. He had to learn how to write and how to read. He had to have access to books in order to enrich his knowledge. He had to be able at some point to move out of the house and to go be a writer. So he had to be accepted in certain environments in which he could write and act and sell his plays. And what she's showing is that Judith Shakespeare would not have been allowed to do that legally and culturally. And she's showing that the equally brilliant, equally inspired sister of William Shakespeare would have had to stay in her corner, and she would not have been allowed the same level of education. She wouldn't have had the same access to books. She wouldn't have had the same access to theater. She wouldn't have been able to move out of the house. She wouldn't have been able to own a place and then to sell her play and to access the theater environment, etc., etc. What she does that's brilliant is that instead of engaging in an abstract, factual, and counterfactual debate about patriarchy and oppression of women, again, that is absolutely factually correct, and that will be shown later, she just imagines an alternative figure to William Shakespeare with the same level of things that is praised for, which is inspiration, genius. And she just shows that as a man, as a woman, concretely, she would have been blocked for it. She comes to the conclusion, you should absolutely read the book, but she comes to the conclusion that what is missing from that is for Judith Shakespeare to have rent, to have money coming in every month, of course, to survive, but also she needed a room of her own, a room that is separate from the kitchen, separate from the bedroom, in which she can read and think and write. And that's what's missing, a room of her own for Judith Shakespeare. But what it shows very much, this great example, is that critical thinking, in order to acknowledge politicization, in order to lift the veil of rhetoric, to engage with multiple framing, we need imagination. And not just imagination of, I can imagine a unicorn, but can I imagine a different world, a different life, a different perspective? Can I see the world from the point of view of someone else? Can I imagine another world? Can I understand another culture and its functioning? Can I see the world differently? Imagination is very much about, thinking and speculating about alternative views. And here, literature is very important, but also a lot of philosophy and humanities in general. Thinking critically requires to have the ability to a certain extent to get out of our own head and our own vision of the world and to see it differently. So critical thinking relates directly to the ability to be imaginative, to be creative, and to channel this imagination into thinking of alternative worlds, alternative perspective, which feeds into the three pillars of critical thinking.